Okay, we are having our last meeting of Agriculture, Conservation, and Natural Resources, unless, of course, we call a meeting at my desk next week. But otherwise, clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
And that's without me even being here. Oops, sorry. Do we still have a quorum? Strike the roll, okay. Quorum plus me, okay. Okay, how many do we have?
Well, open the roll one more time.
Oh, yeah, open the roll one more time. Let's do this again. Okay, we have 10 people. All right, wonderful. A rump parliament. Okay, okay. All right, why don't we do this? I know that the Companion Animal Subcommittee has been working hard.
Yes.
And I have the hardworking chair to my right. So if you want to go ahead and motor through your report, why don't you do that?
All right.
Senator Marson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First off, I would like to thank members of the committee, Senator Favola, Senator Hackworth, for their work this year. And the first bill we had before us was House Bill 53, involving zoos and petting zoos and the seizure of animals. It defines animals located at a zoo or petting zoo as agricultural animals for the standards for seizure or an impoundment of companion animals. The bill also contains some technical amendments. And basically what this is a due process bill, Mr. Chairman, in terms of making sure that if you're going to seize zoo animals, that there is proper process, and the bill attempts to fix that. Because we've had so many issues this year with breeding facilities and what have you, I thought it would be a good idea to have a letter. The committee thought that, and they recommend that the bill be carried over for a year with a letter to the state veterinarian to put a study group together as to how due process can be carried out for these zoo owners. And we're going to put zoo owners, recommend that we put zoo owners on this work group, as well as some other important folks at VDAX. And so the state veterinarian does work for VDAX. So this was our recommendation 3-0. So I move that we carry it over with a letter to the state veterinarian at VDAX. And that is my motion. And
Okay, I've got a motion and a second to carry over House Bill 53. Is that correct?
that's correct.
All right.
With a letter.
And I have motion and a second, carried over with a letter. Clerk, open the roll.
Ayes 10, no 0.
Okay, ayes 10, no 0. House Bill 53 is carried over.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Next bill.
House Bill 523 deals with pet shops and the notice of deceased animals, and we had Delegate Converse Fowler as the patron on this bill, and it requires pet shops to retain records indicating any time a dog or cat in its possession dies or is euthanized. Such records shall be maintained for 2 years and made available to animal control officers and the state animal inspector. As you know, there are still regulations being drawn up for pet stores, and an investigator has been put into the budget a couple of years ago. We're not quite there yet, but this bill was, I think, appropriate, and we recommended reporting 3-0, and I so move.
Do I have a second? Second. Okay, I've got a motion and a second to report House Bill 523. Clerk, open the roll.
Ayes 10, no 0.
Okay, ayes 10, no 0. That bill reports. Next bill, please.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Stanley is not here, and we have an amendment that I was going to have him discuss.
Right.
Would it be okay to?
Why don't we hold off on
that one?
House Bill 1350? That's, I think
Delegate
that's
Bells.
the Envigo bill.
That is, yes, involves in Vigo.
And I think there has been white smoke from the Vatican on that one, so.
That is correct.
Okay.
With the amendment, and I would just prefer Senator Stanley.
But we'll
who
get
has the
Stanley
companion
here.
bill, and then we can
To take the
get
victory
that out
lap.
of here.
Okay, all right. Okay, moving along. Let me take up the House patrons that are here, and I see the gentleman from Halifax, Delegate Edmonds.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of committee. I actually have three bills in front of you. Would you like me to start with 1330?
Why don't you start with uncontroversial?
Okay, we'll start with 1330 then. Mr. Chairman, the House substitute of House Bill 1330 requires a reasonable attempt to scan a companion animal for a microchip at the time of intake, at the time of assessment, and prior to disposition. If a chip is detected, the agency, veterinarian, or shelter shall make every reasonable attempt to contact the owner. It also requires that the agency shall maintain documentation for at least 30 days from the date of final disposition, the reason an animal could not be scanned. We have worked with Virginia Alliance for Animal Shelters and other stakeholders to draft this substitute, and to my knowledge, there is peace in the valley.
Okay, scanning for a microchip. Okay, and this is just vets and shelters.
Yes, sir, I think
Okay,
that's
it's
correct.
not like if I pick up a kitty cat or something, I gotta
No,
scan
sir.
for a microchip.
No, sir.
Okay, all right. Oh, well, I wouldn't euthanize them anyway.
I'm sure
Okay.
that somebody will tell you different
All right.
if they.
Any questions for the patron? All right, do we have anybody in support of this legislation?
For those attendees in the Zoom room who would like to speak in support of the bill, please raise your hand electronically now. Mr. Chairman, there are no hands raised online.
Okay, I have a question for Senator Stewart.
Delegate Edmonds, this is requiring them to scan them for a chip before they euthanize, is that correct?
Correct, yes, sir.
Okay. All right, any other questions for the delegate? Anyone in opposition?
For those attendees in the Zoom room who would like to speak in opposition to the bill, please raise your hand electronically now. Mr. Chairman, there are no hands raised.
Oh, I got somebody. Come on up. Step aside, Jimmy.
Absolutely.
Hi, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. On behalf of the Richmond SPCA, my name is Tabitha Treelor. Not necessarily opposition, but we do have some concerns about the bill in terms of animals that are transferred from one Virginia shelter to another. While we certainly are in favor of the first receiving shelter scanning a stray animal, having that convey when ownership transfers to another Virginia releasing agency does create some complications that delay adoption.
Okay, can you be specific about what's delaying adoption here?
So, as the bill currently is worded, requiring that the animal is scanned again on intake, assessment, and disposition, and that the owner is contacted on each of those is concerning in that, so when an animal gets transferred from the first releasing agency that takes it in, it appears that this bill is going to require the next shelter that takes custody of the animal to then again scan and attempt to make contact on each of these three steps.
Okay, you've identified a problem. What's the solution?
That I'm not exactly sure of, Senator. I think that if we were to make clear that that it applies to the first releasing agency to take custody, that may be a question for staff.
Lisa, is there a way we could add an enactment clause or something, just saying this shall only apply to the first releasing agency that has custody?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, I believe we could actually codify it as part of the language, maybe a sentence at the end of line 235, where the new language ends, just saying like the requirements of this section shall not apply, or shall only apply to the, trying to think.
Only apply to the initial releasing agency?
Right, the initial veterinarian, public or private shelter or releasing agency that receives an animal.
Okay, to the initial veterinarian, where you said private shelter or releasing agency?
Yes, sir, mimicking the language on line 224.
All right, why don't we do this? Why don't, have a seat, Obenchain, please. All right. Why don't, can we move an amendment to just capture that? And Lisa, I can either do that as a floor amendment or we could do it here if you want to do it here. If you think you can, right here.
I mean, I think I would, subject to any kind of editing that, grammatical editing that might be needed, I think I would just say the provisions of this section shall not
only
apply
apply
to the initial veterinarian, public or private animal shelter or releasing agency,
Okay,
or shall only apply to
Right.
those entities that receive an animal.
Okay, all right, so do we have a motion?
Thank you, Senator.
Come on back, come on back, come on back. Okay, the
My
question.
apologies.
Mr. Chairman.
The question was raised, how would you know?
So I can see a scenario, maybe it's released from one agency to a next, but then you're setting up a situation where if one agency gets an animal, and then it goes to a person, and then another agency gets it, the whole point of this bill is to make sure that you try to find the owner before you either euthanize it or give it to somebody else.
So the way that transfers work of stray animals, and Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, please.
okay. The way that stray animals are transferred between Virginia releasing agencies is that they're only made available for transfer after the stray period has expired.
Okay, why don't we do this? Why don't we just say this statute, or this statute shall not apply to transfers between releasing agencies? I think that's what you're
I think that's a terrific solution,
Okay, all right.
Senator.
I move that amendment. Can I get a second? All right. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right, there you go. Okay. Anybody else? All right, can I have a motion on the bill, please? All right, we have a motion to report the bill as amended. Clerk, open the roll.
Ayes 14, no zero.
Ayes 14, no zero. Delegate, next bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I think it may be helpful to have a little background
Yes, sir.
of the right to retrieve that is in our code section today. So I'm turning your attention, please, to 1331.
1331.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, many years ago, the right to retrieve code section was adopted to address retrieving dogs used to hunt treeing animals, primarily fox and raccoon. Then sometime later, the code section was amended to include all game. The original purpose was to allow a hunter to go to the treeing dogs and retrieve them. As bear and deer hunting grew in popularity, the use of hounds increased, creating more hunter-landowner conflict. Virginia right to retrieve is one of the few, if not the only, exception where the law allows someone to enter another person's property without permission. You can't look for a lost companion animal or even a lost grandparent without seeking permission first. House Bill 1331 is pretty self-explanatory, Mr. Chairman. It revokes the privilege to exercise the right to retrieve for a period of 5 years, but only for those who have been convicted of trespassing on posted property or trespassing to hunt on posted property. Mr. Chairman, I would contend that if someone has proven that they are going to disregard the current trespassing laws, then they should not be allowed to come on someone's private property without permission for any reason. Mr. Chairman, for the honest hunters, this bill will have no effect. You may have heard opposition to this bill, not on what the bill does, but what it might do. It might open up the code section for further amendments. Mr. Chairman, I can assure you that will not happen, and if it does, I will strike the bill as it moves forward, if it moves forward. Mr. Chairman, this is not the rural Virginia 50 years ago. Land ownership is changing and has become much more fragmented. There is a higher sensitivity today for private property rights than years past. The purpose of House Bill 1331 is to deter those who have a proven disregard for our current trespassing laws. Mr. Chairman, I come from a long line of hound hunters, and in my experience, there exists an element of trust between ethical hunters and most landowners. However, someone who has violated that trust with a trespassing conviction should at least be required to have permission before entering the property of another. House Bill 1331 will improve landowner-hunting relations and, I believe, preserve the right to retrieve for years to come in Virginia.
Thank you, Delegate. All right, here's what we're going to do, because I know there's going to be a lot of people that want to testify on this. Why don't we do, I'm going to say 5 minutes each. Thank you, Senator. 5 minutes each, so use your time judiciously, and why don't we get the supporters?
For those attendees in
Come on
the
up,
Zoom room
get in line.
who would like to speak in support of the bill, please raise your hand electronically now.
Okay. And by the way, it doesn't mean you have to speak for 5 minutes if you're the only one. But come on forward, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Judge Charlton. I'm from Charlotte County, and I speak for the Virginia Property Rights Alliance. We support this bill.
Okay, thank you. That was very good. Okay, anybody else in the room? Anybody on Zoom?
Mr. Chairman, there are no hands raised online.
Okay, opposition, you get more than 9 seconds. Opposition.
For those attendees in the Zoom room who would like to speak in opposition to the bill, please raise your hand electronically now.
Okay, come on forward.
Chairman Peterson, my name is John Morris. I'm from Chesapeake. I'm with the Virginia Hunting Dog Alliance. We have statistical information that indicates there's been 14 summonses regarding the right to retrieval on 2021 out of 160,000 people hunting with a dog. We feel like punishing someone for a prior trespass violation is inappropriate. We oppose the bill because it punishes anyone with a trespass conviction, even if it wasn't a hunting violation, and would prohibit that person from from rescuing his dog for 5 years. We're simply asking that you oppose this bill.
Okay, thank you.
Sir.
All right, next speaker, come forward.
No, you, Senator
Yes,
Peterson.
sir, Max, go ahead.
With Riverdale Farm and Wilton Hunt Club,
State
asked
your name,
to,
sir.
Max Crittenden,
Okay, thanks.
asked to oppose this bill, please.
Okay. All right, anyone else here to oppose the bill? Anybody online to oppose the bill?
Mr. Chairman, there are no hands raised online.
1 minute, amazing. Okay, any questions from the panel?
Move to report.
Well, hold on a
Mr.
second.
Chairman, may I just address a concern that was brought up?
Sure.
So this bill will only affect those who have been convicted of trespassing moving forward, not in arrears.
I
So
get you.
hopefully it'll be a deterrent for any nefarious activity.
Okay, all right. Chair will entertain a motion.
Move to report.
We have a motion and a second to report the bill. Clerk, open the roll.
Ayes 4, noes 11.
Ayes 4, noes 11, and do you want to reverse the roll to PBI? Do I have a motion to do that? Sorry, so moved. All right. Motion and second, reverse the roll to PBI. Just go ahead, can you put it in the book that way? Maybe it's too complicated. Just open the roll.
Well, yeah, no, of course we can.
Motion of PBI. All right, thank you, Delegate. Next bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Next, Mr. Chairman, House Bill 1344. I do have an amendment that I'd like
Okay.
to propose.
You want to distribute that?
I've asked staff, but I can report it. It's pretty simple.
Okay. Staff, do you have it, or you want to just have them report it?
I was going to read it, or he can read it.
Delegate, you can read it.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, on line 15, on the engrossed bill, after Hunter, insert who is retrieving his dog during daylight hunting hours. And then on line 7, at the beginning of line 17, strike during legal daylight hunting hours. And Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Yeah, can you explain
the
that,
purpose
please?
of that is just to make sure that, to clarify that this will not apply to those who are retrieving their dogs after.
Mr. Chairman, just one more
hours.
time, I'm writing this
What
down.
what
as
was
you
the
speak.
first part, Delegate?
The first part of the amendment,
Yeah,
sir?
what was the first part you said?
After Hunter on line 15,
Right?
insert who is retrieving his dog during legal daylight hunting hours.
Okay. All right, do I have a motion to adopt that amendment? Okay, I have a motion and a second to adopt that amendment. All in favor, say aye. Okay, motion is agreed. All right, so you've got the bill as amended. Tell us what this does.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, House Bill 1344 as amended simply requires that an individual must attempt to notify a landowner prior to exercising their right to retrieve if the property is posted and includes the landowner's contact information. It does not require permission. It simply requires a courtesy call or text, however the landowner prefers to be contacted, prior to going on to posted lands to retrieve a dog. I would also remind the committee that the provisions to retrieve a hound in danger still remain in this bill. So it's basically a courtesy call or text to say, hey, I'm going to just let you know I'm coming onto your property.
And this, the phone number, I assume, has to be on the,
Yes, sir.
No-
Or
no
whatever
trespass.
contact information they prefer, and again, it's a reasonable attempt. They don't have to even reach the person, but they have to at least try.
And what's a violation, a class 4 misdemeanor?
Yes, sir.
Okay, what's that, like $100 fine? Yeah, okay. All righty, any questions from the panel for the delegate? Senator Morrissey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Delegate, if the hunter goes onto the land, is he allowed to carry the gun when he does that pursuant to your amendment, who is retrieving his dog during legal daylight hunting hours? Does the gun still have to be left on the other contiguous property, or may he carry that gun onto the posted property?
Senator Morrissey, no, the gun is not allowed to be carried onto the property for any purpose to right retrieve.
Follow-up question, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead,
Senator Morrissey.
Senator Morrissey.
When I first read this, if the thought occurred to me, the language dealing with shall try to contact the landowner or his agent by phone, text, or email, that you're going to end up with a situation with a confrontation between hunter and landowner. That was my first reaction. Landowner gets the call and takes it objects to it, and it races out there and there's a confrontation. Can you assure me that that's not going to occur? Or can you address that concern?
Yes, Senator Morrissey, yeah, I can address that, and I can tell you that it's probably less confrontation, less potential confrontation by that means than to actually have the person, if they didn't want them on their property in the first place, to meet them face to face as a surprise situation. So
Okay.
that would be my response to that.
All right, thank you, Delegate.
Okay. All right, supporters, why don't we say 2 minutes? Supporters, come forward.
For those attendees in the Zoom room who would like to speak in support of the bill, please raise your hand electronically now.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Stephanie Talon with Virginia Farm Bureau. We have longstanding policy in support of the right to retrieve law, as well as the provisions of this bill that says if a hunter is retrieving their dog, they shall attempt to contact the landowner if contact information is posted. We think this courtesy notification is a very reasonable request, and we ask that you support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Judge Charlton, Charlotte County. I speak for the Virginia Property Rights Alliance. Although we feel Bill 1334 is a step in the right direction, we do not feel that it goes far enough to protect property rights. If our land is posted, and we don't want the trucks, and we don't want the hunters, and the dogs, and the guns, and everything else that goes along with this great tradition, we are probably not going to want a call from somebody that we don't know to remind us that there's nothing that we can do about it.
Okay, you realize that they can't bring the firearm on the property with them?
I think fox and raccoon hunters can.
Okay, you may be correct, well,
They can.
I don't, doesn't look that way to me, but what do
Yes,
I
it
know?
is.
Okay, all right. All right, anybody on Zoom that's in support of this bill?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, all right, let me get to opponents, and same thing, 2 minutes, opponents, come forward.
For those attendees in the Zoom room who would like to speak in opposition to the bill, please raise your hand electronically now.
And we'll get to the live people first.
Again, John Morris from Chesapeake, Virginia Hunting Dog Alliance. We're asking you to oppose 1344 based on the fact that common law has always recognized the right to recover personal property from the land of another. When dogs follow game onto the land of another, they should and can be recovered by the current code section. Section 18.2136, enacted in 1938, recognizes this right, but tells the hunter that he or she cannot drive a vehicle, take a gun, and that if requested by the landowner, has to provide ID information. Again, if the landowner confronts the person doing right to retrieve, the current law says that he has to provide that information. A lot of times in doing right to retrieve, the hunters may be coming from the backside of a property or not where possibly the person lives. This is going to require posted signs by the landowner in an incredible amount of area. I'm not sure that's appropriate either. Bottom line is, folks, I think the current code section is efficient. It's worked for years. Again, as I stated on the previous bill, in 2021, there were 14
Yep,
problems with
we
this.
got it, we got it.
Sir,
All right.
thank you.
Yep, thank you. Next.
Good afternoon, Chairman Peterson and members of the committee. My name is Robin Hutt. I'm an avid dog hunter from Richmond County, Virginia. This law will not solve problems, it's going to create problems. Someone who goes to the trouble to post property that he or she wants to be contacted will expect the dog owner not to enter the property when they refuse permission. Under this bill, the hunter will have to prove they made an attempt to contact the landowner. If the perimeter is not adequately,
Okay, why don't you just finish your sentence?
okay, if the perimeter is not adequately posted, who will have to prove the hunter has seen the sign with the contact information?
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Max, go ahead.
Max Crittenden, Middlesex County, Riverdale Farm, Wilton Hunt Club. Oppose this bill. My hunt dog on your land does me no good. I can't hunt your land. I can't run your land. Dog on your land does me no good. I want to get it and get out of there as soon as possible.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Max. Okay, any questions for the delegate? And I have a question. If you post your land, no hunting, and you say, here's my phone number, and by the way, if you come on my land, I'm gonna shoot you or I'm gonna take lethal action against you. And I said, well, that Jimmy Evans, tough guy, and my dog goes on your land, and so I don't text you, and I go get my dog anyway. I'm in violation of the statute, obviously.
So, Mr.
Yeah,
Chairman,
go ahead.
if I may, so posted property, code section 18.2, 134.1, right now defines how land is considered to be posted, and
Right.
it's to have signs where they may be reasonably seen. And, if a landowner doesn't care enough to do that, encompass their property, this bill won't affect them. If they don't want to post it, they would certainly need to post the entire perimeter to answer the question about coming in from the backside.
My fear is, delegate, that you may be inciting a confrontation where it may not happen. In other words, if my dog runs onto somebody's land, by the way, I don't own dogs, or the dog I do is not going hunting anytime soon. But let's say a dog goes on the property and you just go and get it back, as opposed to sending a text to somebody, and then there may be a face-to-face, man-to-man confrontation that you don't want. So, anyways, that's,
Mr. Chairman, if I may, one last comment. And that's
okay, yeah, but feel free to respond.
Okay, well, I just contend that the confrontation, just because you're going to sneak on the backside, so to speak, while nobody's looking, and that makes it okay, is not okay. Because I think the landowner should at least know when somebody's on their property.
Okay.
And this doesn't just apply to hunting situations, the right to retrieve does not. It applies to anyone, anytime, 24/7, 365.
Okay.
So just keep that in mind as well.
All right, Senator Morrissey, do you have a question?
Just a couple for Delegate Edmonds. Delegate, first of all, kudos to you for trying to continue to work to resolve this issue. But here's what I see. I see a sign that's up there that has the owner's number and email on there. And I see a situation where a hunter is going to retrieve his dog. I cannot fathom a situation where the hunter stops, puts down weapon, dials up or texts or emails the owner, as opposed to just going, get the dog and bring him back out. I just can't see the efficacy of this law, and that's where I'm conflicted, in addition to what the chairman and I said earlier about a needless confrontation.
Okay. Senator Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question for staff or somebody, because I've had a hard time with this bill. It seems reasonable to me, but I've listened to the opponents of it, and I don't know if anybody can answer this. Maybe you can, Mr. Chairman, because you do this sort of law. Do landowners have liability for any form of negligence for trespassers?
I would say no.
No liability whatsoever?
Unless it was purposeful.
I don't think you have premises liability. That person's not an invitee. Thank you, Open Shane. Yeah, it'd be gross negligence, I mean, if you have like a booby trap or
I
something.
think you do
but-
for gross negligence,
but-
too.
But not for, a slip and fall, the person's not an invitee.
But, Mr. Chairman, wouldn't you have negligence for hidden dangers
No. I'll
that
represent you.
you were aware of?
You're good, you're good.
Okay.
All right. All right, Chair will entertain a motion.
Move to report.
Okay, we've got a motion and a motion and a second to report the bill. Clerk, open the roll.
Ayes 5, noes 10.
Okay, ayes 5, noes 10. I'd invite a motion to PBI.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second to pass the bill by indefinitely. Open the roll. Okay. All right, thank you, Delegate. And listen, these are tough issues, and we had a very abbreviated conversation. Obviously, we've been lobbied on this for the last 2 weeks, so we've talked to a lot of people, and I understand the property rights versus the legality of it, but thank you, Delegate.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank committee.
Okay, I'm going to say who's in the queue. Delegate Wright, you're next. Let me just run down names. I have Wright, Hodges, Davis, Wilt, Bloxham, Bell, and Weber, Kilgore. So if you wanted to, David, I don't have you yet. So if it's uncontested, I can just take you through.
Same as
Then you're on. Okay, all right, Delegate Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the committee. House Bill 1273 simply says that any person engaged in lawful hunting with a dog shall ensure that the dog has a tag identifying the name of the owner or custodian and a current phone number. The tag shall be securely fastened to a substantial collar by the owner or custodian and worn by such dog. And ladies and gentlemen, this is strictly to make it easier for people to identify who the dog belongs to, and in case that somebody is to locate the dog and wants to call the owner. It happens all the time to people whose dogs get lost, and also it might discourage people from turning dogs loose at the end of the season that they don't think are very good dogs.
Any questions for the panel for the delegate?
Ready to make a motion.
Okay, any supporters or opponents?
For those attendees in the Zoom room who would like to speak in support or opposition to the bill, please raise your hand electronically now. Mr. Chairman, there are no hands raised online.
Okay, Barbara, do you have a question? Make a motion, Barbara.
Mr. Chairman, I move we report the bill.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to report the bill. Clerk, open the roll.
Ayes 15, noes 0.
Ayes 15, noes 0. Delegate Hodges.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, it's not a dog bill.
All right.
And you ready?
Yes, sir, go ahead.
We're talking living shorelines today. So hot topic down in our neck of the woods. As you know, Mr. Chairman, living shorelines are the preferred method for resiliency. We know what they do as far as water quality and critters and absorbent wave energy and the long-term benefit, of course, with water quality. And the problem we're having here is cost of a living shoreline. So the average cost of a living shoreline is roughly $650 a linear foot. So you're looking at the width of this room, just eyeing it, you're looking at about 20 grand for a living shoreline. And since we put and codified the definition of living shoreline, we've learned a great deal. And when you look at the current definition, it says the placement of plants, stones, sandfill, and other structural and organic materials. And what we're focusing on here is the other structural and organic materials because we've learned a great deal and have defined that.
All right, if you're going to have a conversation, go out in the hall. I cannot hear Delegate Hodges. And that includes talking on the phone.
I'll be glad to talk like I'm talking to my daughter
Just
sometimes. So
keep talking to me.
y'all can hear me. So anyway, what we've done here is if we're defining other structural materials to include other things, including, where are we? Rock, concrete, wood fiber, oyster shells. When you look at concrete, oysters will strike concrete any day of the week over granite, 20 to 1 probably. And also geotextiles, and we further get into contaminants and so forth. But what we've learned is these other structural materials in other structures that have the benefits of a living shoreline and have critters and oysters and promote vegetation, we can get the costs down substantially. And when you're looking at, oyster reef with sand and plants, that's $466 versus the $650 a linear foot. Fleximat, which you can roll out, it has concrete mat, is $436, and Viralock, $180, and Atrix, which they actually have down on the Nansmith River, and they were studying that, and it's done extremely well. That's $130 a linear foot. So what we're trying to do is give folks the tools to be able to do the right thing, to incentivize them to use a living shoreline instead of a hardened structure. And we know the benefit in the long run of the living shorelines.
Okay, any questions from the panel for the Delegate Hodges? Okay, do we have supporters of this bill? Peggy?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Peggy Sanner, Chesapeake Bay Foundation. Want to first thank the patron for working with us. We support the bill.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Louis Lawrence at the Middle Peninsula Planning District Commission. We operate the only financing program in Virginia for living shorelines, and we hear from constituents daily that this bill will help. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else in support? Anybody on Zoom?
No, Mr. Chairman, there are no hands raised.
Okay, how about opposition?
For those attendees in the Zoom room who would like to speak in opposition to the bill, please raise your hand electronically now. Mr. Chairman, there are no hands raised.
Okay, I got a motion to report, and I have a second. All right, clerk, open the roll.
Ayes 15, no 0.
Okay, 15-0.
All right,
Bill
thank you.
reports. Good work. Okay, next have Delegate Davis. I don't see.
Delegate Davis is in committee.
He's in committee. All right, Delegate Wilt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members. I guess numerical order. We've got four bills.
Sure. Let's start with least controversial and then work your way down.
Mr. Chairman, I don't believe any of them are controversial.
That's perfect. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, there you go. Mr. Chairman, committee members, before you first, House Bill 830 directs VDAX to develop a 5-year plan to increase the throughput of our meat processing facilities. You have seen this bill in your own body previously. Delegate Pillion's Senate Bill 726. I believe your total body looked favorably on that unanimously. This is identical to that.
Yeah, Senator Favola.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to make sure that there's some kind of report to the General Assembly. I don't see that in here, but the department's establishing a strategic plan. To the extent public and private funds become available, the department may establish a program of financial incentives. But there's nothing about reporting the strategic plan to the General Assembly. I'll just ask my colleagues, do you want to see the plan? Okay.
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 We had a bill from Delegate Pillion, or Senator Pillion. It's identical. Okay. All right. Let's keep it identical. All right. All right. I have a motion and a second to report the bill. By the way, I have a client that does halal meat, and they're looking to open a slaughterhouse, so. Maybe out your way. Okay, we have a motion and a second to report the bill. Clerk, open the roll. They haven't opened it yet.
Ayes 15, no 0.
Ayes 15, noes 0. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members. Next before you, House Bill 831 gives direction to anaerobic digestion. It defines digestate. It brings that whole venue under the purview of VDAX for management and direction purposes.
Delegate, I think we've got an identical one on this.
Yes.
Which was Surabel's bill, which was number
248, Mr. Chairman.
Move to report. I have a motion, a second. Clerk, open the roll. Okay, that was easy. Okay, 15-0. Bill reports. Okay, next one.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before you now, House Bill 837. Basically what it does, it brings the inspection purview between VDAX and the Department of Health. And so already there's, those are separated. They've reached an understanding who inspects what. But there are some localities that have duplicative inspections, okay? And so therefore fees and whatnot. And so
Right.
what this does is it separates those out. Still, a restaurant, a plant that processes milk and shellfish establishment would still stay under the health department and a restaurant. The rest of them will be under the purview of VDAX. That's pretty much it, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I know I had some pushback from my localities back home that they have local food inspection programs. Is anyone here from VDAX? Yes, please come forward. Are you Charles Green? Is Charles Green here?
With the governor's office.
Come on up, because I've heard from Fairfax County as well as Fairfax City, they have a food inspection program and they're worried that this will be duplicative. What can you tell me about that?
So that is the crux of the bill. So over the past 60 years, VDAX has had sole inspection regulatory authority over these stores, kind of with the evolution of grocery stores. Other agencies within the state as well as localities have come in with local ordinances to add an inspection. I think it's worth noting that in the past 15 years, operating under the VDAX purview, there hasn't been any foodborne illness outbreaks. This is specifically looking at retail food stores, including supermarkets, grocery stores, convenience stores. They're already currently under inspection by the state through VDAX. There's only 5 localities that are kind of going in behind doing the same inspection over again to look at the exact same items, and so this would bring everything singularly under VDAX.
Senator Suderland.
Can he just tell us those 5 localities real quick?
Fairfax, Portsmouth, Norfolk, what was it? Alexandria, and Arlington. Yes.
Okay, does this bill prohibit them, or is it a Dillon rule issue? I mean, would they be allowed to keep doing that?
It would prohibit them. It would say that the only inspection necessary for operation is the permit that the state VDAX would issue.
All right, further question. What gives them the authority right now?
There is a code that would allow them to have local food ordinances. We look at this one that is separate. This is one that is already being inspected by the state. VDAX is already doing the same inspection that they are now coming in and doing after we do our inspection.
All right.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Favola.
I have a minor little amendment I would like to offer.
Yes,
In
ma'am.
jurisdiction, I do represent portions of Arlington, Fairfax, and Loudoun. And my jurisdictions, although I haven't heard from Loudoun, are telling me that they actually inspect above and beyond what the state requirement is. So I'm wondering if usually state requirements are a minimum, and we want that minimum standard across the Commonwealth. And I think that's a good thing. But would you be, I guess this is for Delegate Wilt, my jurisdiction on line 25, after food establishment, Mr. Chairman, may I offer this?
Yes, please, go ahead.
So after food establishments say it and is subject to a local ordinance regulating the sale, preparation, and handling of food, and then pickup or is operating.
So, can you repeat that?
Yes.
Subject to, go ahead.
It's subject to a local ordinance regulating the sale, preparation, and handling of food. So in effect, I'm saying the establishment would have to meet state standard as well as the local standard. I believe
Okay.
that's what I'm saying.
All right, I'm going to second that just so we can talk about it.
Okay.
Senator Obenchain.
Can I talk about it?
Yes, please.
Part of my concern is, we've heard a lot of discussion over the past several years about food deserts in parts of Virginia. I know that Portsmouth is an area that has problems with food deserts, and believe it or not, even parts of Fairfax, I think, classify as having food deserts. And I, for one, am concerned about making it harder for grocers to be able to open, operate, and be licensed. And we have local governments that are adopting ordinances that are higher than those standards that are imposed by the states, I suspect that that is a contributing factor to the difficulty, expense, and trouble in opening and maintaining a store. So I would be opposed to that amendment.
All right, let's do this, because I think this amendment kind of gets to the crux of the bill. Where did VDAC, there you are. Is somebody here from Fairfax County or from any of the affected jurisdictions? I know Claudia came to talk to me. Go ahead and step right up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
There you go.
Mr. Chair, Joanna Faust on behalf of Fairfax County, and again, thanks to Delegate Wilt for taking the time to listen to us. But it's exactly the issue that you had raised, and I think VDAX and BDH stated it the best in their MOU from last month. Title 3.2, Agriculture, Animal Care, and Food, delegates authority to VDAX to inspect all establishments that manufacture, sell, or food products.
Right.
Whereas Title 35.1, Hotels, Restaurants, delegates to BDH or the BDH designees to inspect establishments where food is prepared for service or consumption. So the intersect comes in these establishments, retail food establishments that combine the traditional grocery store warehouse type place with the place where the food, almost functionally a restaurant, where they make you the pizza and the sushi.
Like a Super H or
Whole Foods,
Whole
Wegmans,
Foods or, yeah, Wegmans.
Arlington Airport, where you can get your food, your Doritos and stuff, but then you're also making you a sandwich or something of those lines. So localities throughout the state have adopted ordinances under that authority in 35.1, which defines restaurant broadly. In
Okay.
addition, cities and towns have additional authority under 15.2-1109 to municipal corporations to inspect food products. And that's where many of the cities and towns are coming.
Okay, so now I'm starting to see a nightmare scenario. Let's say it's Super H. Not one of my clients, knock on wood, but they could be just inspected by VDAX, by VDH, and by Fairfax City.
But to be clear, Mr. Chair, to answer that, our Dillon Rule authority is only the sale, preparation, and handling of food because it's coming from the restaurant section of the code, where the food is being cooked, the cleanliness,
Right.
going to where the hot temperature, not to
So
inspect.
you're just the kitchens.
The kitchen part is our only Dillon Rule authority under 35.1. Again, cities and towns have an additional as municipal
Mr. Chairman.
corporation.
Yep, Senator Marston.
Thank you. Anytime, a restaurant is they're going to look at bathrooms, they're going to look at storage areas where, cans have to be off the floor and on a shelf. They'll be looking at a lot of things that are tangential to the operation of a food creation system where, making sandwiches, soups, whatever. How far afield do you go in those kinds of situations? Because that could be in another part of the store where they keep that. So how does that work?
It's my understanding that the inspections that are done by under our food code programs are when it's in these hybrid, I'm using the word hybrid, but it's a retail food establishment where it's not a traditional restaurant. It's going over the sale, preparation, and handling of food because that is our Dillon Rule authority through the food codes that have been established. But I can't speak for cities and towns again because that's a municipal
All right,
corporation.
let me get to the ladies behind you, just real quick, who you represent, and I'm gonna have a.
Hi, Alana Krenin on behalf of Arlington County, and we also oppose this bill. We do thank Delegate Wilt for hearing out our concerns.
Good afternoon, Julie Henderson. I'm the Director of the Office of Environmental Health at Virginia Department of Health, and we support this bill.
Okay, here's what I want to do, Delegate, and I mean no harm to the bill, because I actually like the bill, but I think there's some locality issues and some autonomy issues we got to work out. So what I'd like to do is put a reenactment clause on it and put it into conference. Yeah. I want to get you out of here, and let's get this into conference, because I do think some of this can be worked out. So I'm going to move to put a reenactment on if I can get a second.
I'll second that.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion passes. All right.
I'll be on the conference.
All right. We'll figure out the conferees later. I think you're doing something very important here, but I do think there's some rough edges that got to be smoothed, and I need to talk some people back home.
It's just the reenactment.
Yes, sir. Senator
So
Mason.
other than the 5 cities we've named, who is doing the inspection of the kitchen areas in these type establishments in the rest of the state?
Mr. Chairman, I would say, if it's by definition, if it's a restaurant, it's the health department. If it's the other establishments, it's VDAX. VDAX inspects by USDA code.
Right.
What's demanded there, and their record is impeccable. They have the staff, and they have the record to show that they do a great job. So,
I think this is just an issue with the 5 localities, and we just need to figure that out.
Figure it out.
I get it, okay? All right, where's Spru when you need him? Okay, I think we got this bill where we need it, and we're gonna get it into conference, and we're gonna figure it out.
We can work on it.
Okay, can I get a motion to report the bill?
I move that we report
All right.
as amended.
We have a motion to report, and second as amended. Clerk, open the roll. Okay.
I'm hopeful that we'll work it out.
All right, where's Sting?
Ayes 13, noes 1.
Okay. 13-1.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman,
Very
committee
good.
members. Lastly, before you is House Bill 1267. So last year, we passed legislation that required the State Air Pollution Control Board to adopt emission standards that match those of California. I know some have taken issue with that, but Mr. Chairman, I mean, that's the practical effect of what passed through the General Assembly. So what I'm hoping to do with 1267 is push those back 5 years. And Mr. Chairman, the reason is, I think what very possibly we could have all gotten something we didn't bargain for is that, California now is in the process. What we did last year was under the Clean Cars 1 Act. California is in the process of adopting Clean Cars 2, which is going to totally ban combustion engines, in a relatively short period of time. Okay. And I don't believe that the infrastructure is there to handle all these electric vehicles. You'll hear arguments that, if we without this, they're not going to sell us electric cars. And but anyways, what this does, it delays that.
And I have attention, please, for Delegate Wiltz.
Delays the regulations by 5 years. It requires the Air Pollution Control Board to redo the regs, but this time following the Administrative Process Act. I mean, we passed it and didn't have this type of vetting going forward. And so, Mr. Chairman, that's pretty well the gist of the
Okay, so this is a
legislation.
pretty simple bill. It just takes what we did last year on clean cars and moves it back 5 years from 2025 to 2030 on the threshold for motor vehicles. So it's basically a 5-year delay.
To let the infrastructure catch up. Yep.
I get you. All right, let's get the supporters. I know Volkswagen.
Hello, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Michelle Satterlin on behalf of Volkswagen Group of America. We're headquartered in Herndon, Virginia. We support this bill. While we support the zero emission vehicle program, we don't support it without additional funding. In California, when they put in place the zero emission vehicle program, they also put literally billions of dollars of funding into incentives and rebates. Virginia has not done this, so this bill helps give us breathing room and allows us to get in place the right mechanisms to make this program successful. We ask that you support the bill.
Thank you. Thanks, Michelle. Okay. Any other supporters? I know you are, Senator. You'll get your chance. Okay. All right. Opponents, please. Opponents of the bill.
For those attendees in the Zoom room who would like to speak in opposition to the bill, please raise your hand electronically now.
Okay. Go on. Come forward.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Ralston King, Virginia Auto Dealers Association. We do oppose the bill. Electric vehicles are here, more are coming. This is a key component for incentivizing getting vehicles here in Virginia so our dealers can sell the vehicles. The other key component, as Michelle alluded to, is the EV rebate program. We've had 5 opportunities to fund that, and in all of those circumstances, we haven't funded that. So we ask that you fund that piece as well as this component to get more electric vehicles here.
All right. Thanks, Ralston. Okay. Next.
Mr. Chairman, Harry Godfrey, Virginia Advanced Energy Economy. We represent the
advanced energy and transportation industry in Virginia that employs over 93,000 folks in the state as a whole, including 5,000 folks in the advanced transportation space. The advanced clean car standards that were passed last year provide us with the business certainty to make the investments so that we know we have the infrastructure in place, to train the staff so that we're actually able to service these vehicles, which is a real challenge right now, and then fundamentally to invest in Virginia. What this bill proposes would fundamentally undermine that business certainty and erode our ability precisely when this market is making that pivot. So we respectfully ask you to oppose it.
Thank you. Next up, yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Kim Jermaine with the Chesapeake Climate Action Network and the Associated Action Fund. We believe clean car standards give us the opportunity to expand consumer choice, improve public health, and improve the environment all at the same time. We oppose any efforts to undermine those standards, and we oppose this bill.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Trip Pollard with Southern Environmental Law Center. This is one of the most important tools we have to clean up one of our largest sources of pollution. And I'll stress it's not just the zero-emission vehicles, it's also low-emission vehicles. We only have two choices under federal law. We can either do what the federal government tells us to do, or we can work with 15 other states to have more protective standards. So we ask that you keep the clean car standards. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Trip. Chris.
In addition to the concerns raised by the other members who oppose this, I'd also ask, given that SB 657 is moving through, that would shift permitting authority from the citizen boards to the to DEQ, what does this bill do to the approval process of this legislation? And for the reasons previously stated for the others, Chris Land, Virginia League of Conservation Voters, and we oppose this legislation.
Okay. Next up, yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, Bob Shippey with Sierra Club. Would like to associate myself with the prior remarks, but also say that this goes beyond just a delay. I believe there's a wording change that says that the boards may promulgate regulations rather than shall. So I think it's really more of a straight repeal.
Let me ask you a question, Bob. It says regulations adopted by the State Air Pollution Control Board on December 1, 2021. Did that happen? Yes? I see heads nodding up and down. Okay, so we do have those regs in place right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
I urge you to oppose.
All right,
Thanks.
thank you. All right, anybody on Zoom?
Mr. Chairman, we do have one person on Zoom.
One person, okay, very quickly.
David McGowan, would you please unmute and begin your testimony? David McGowan, would you please unmute and begin your testimony?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Sorry, having some technical difficulties here. I'm David McGowan, Southeast Region Director with the American Petroleum Institute. Wanted to thank Delegate Wilt for patroning this legislation. API supports the market-driven transition to electric vehicles, but is very concerned by the mandate that has been imposed on the citizens of the Commonwealth. We believe strongly that government should not be picking winners and losers and should instead let Virginia consumers choose the best vehicles for themselves and their families. A delay in the implementation will enable the state to conduct a transparent rulemaking process, provide manufacturers time to work through computer chip, material shortages, and other supply chain issues, as well as to develop the infrastructure needed to support electric vehicles. We support 1267 and urge the committee to favorably report this legislation. Again, thank you for your time and consideration.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Chair.
One second, I've got, two people to queue, starting with Senator Hashmi. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just speaking against, in opposition to this bill, I know this bill would actually be a repeal of our clean car standards, and as some of the folks who have already spoken have shared, Virginians do want electric vehicles. I think Virginians desperately want electric vehicles or any options that will help promote the purchase of electric vehicles. And the problem is that there are simply not enough available here. Manufacturers are sending the electric vehicles to those states that have the ready options. Maryland is a clean car state, and so many of these vehicles end up in Maryland rather than in Virginia. And in fact, I believe the statistics show that 1/3 of EVs, as well as low EVs, are actually registered. that are registered in Virginia were actually bought in another state. The more we support and give Virginians access to the purchase of EVs, I think we will see an increase of consumer demand. And I think we have an obligation to do that, most especially if we're going to address the issues of carbon emissions in Virginia. So I'm going to be opposing this bill, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Senator Favola, and then Obenshain.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to make a motion, and the motion would be that we carry over this bill, which is a gentle way, very gentle, of saying the bill will be PBI'd. I'm so wedded to the electric vehicle legislation that we passed in the special session. I just think we have to keep moving forward. I do understand why you brought the legislation, and I do understand the need to put more money into the program, but I think the leverage we need as lawmakers is to have these laws on the books so we can help the appropriators see the value of putting money into the program. So with that said, and I endorse the comments made by my colleague, Senator Hashmi.
Okay, so we have a motion to carry over. Is there a second?
Am I going to be allowed to speak?
You will be allowed to speak. Is there a
It's
second?
in the queue.
Okay, I'll second the motion, but go ahead, and you're in the queue. Go ahead, Senator Obenshain. You can speak to the motion or speak to the underlying bill.
Well, I actually had a question that I wanted to ask. May I ask the auto dealers to return?
Yeah, auto dealers.
Yes, sir.
I've got a lot of auto dealers in my state, my part of Virginia, and I can tell you not a single one of them has called me to tell me that they are in opposition to this or in support of what we passed before. I mean, is this an issue that the auto dealers around the state have voted on?
Yeah, it's a statewide commitment to EVs. This with the funding is very critical as we move forward for electric vehicles, whether it's in the Shenandoah Valley or Northern Virginia.
I'm sorry, my question may not have been clear. What I was asking is, have the auto dealers, the dealers themselves, voted on this?
We take direction from our board, and they have directed us to move forward with opposing this bill currently, and we will evaluate that on an ongoing basis.
Are the auto dealers in Western Virginia in support of or opposed to this bill?
We have a statewide board that's represented from all different areas of Virginia. And so everybody gets a vote or a say into this matter.
Is the statewide board unanimous in their opposition to this bill?
Not necessarily.
Don Byer loves it. Okay.
Just like this committee is not unanimous.
One additional question.
Yes, sir.
Is the statewide board primarily made up of urban dealers?
No, sir.
Okay.
So speaking to the bill.
Go ahead.
The motion, I was interested in hearing that Virginians do want electric vehicles, and I think that there are certainly some Virginians who do want electric vehicles, but if they do want electric vehicles, I suspect that people will buy electric vehicles, and we don't need to pass or double down on laws that are intended to tell people in Virginia that they want electric vehicles. I think the marketplace works pretty doggone well, and rather than forcing, I see people shaking their heads in the back of the room, and I understand that there are people who take a dim view of the free market in America and in Virginia, but I think that we ought to let people choose what kind of cars that they want to buy and not cram this down their throats.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
hold on. Let me get all the comments from the panel. I'll let you conclude. Senator Stewart.
Mr. Chairman, I want to commend the gentleman for bringing this bill. I think it's a good piece of compromise legislation. I brought a bill to entirely repeal it. Didn't do very well with that, and I knew what the writing was. But I've listened contently to the folks who testified on this and talked about how important the EV market is and the emissions. But I would remind everybody that the bill that was passed last year tied our emissions to California. And California's gone so nuts that the leading EV maker, whom you all are trying to assist, Tesla, is leaving because they can't deal with California's regulations. And I'm not sure we should be adopting regulations tied to California any way, shape, or form, even if it is to help get rebates for these vehicles. So I think this gentleman's come up with a good piece of compromise legislation, just pushes it down the road a little bit, allows us to gain the infrastructure, which we do not have. My father-in-law has a Tesla. You can't find hardly any place to charge it. I mean, you actually have to plot it out on the map to try to get a charge somewhere in general parts of Virginia. So I would move that the bill be reported.
Okay, is that a substitute motion? Okay, I've got a substitute motion to report the bill. Before we get to the vote, Delegate, you get to make closing comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I would, it's been a robust discussion. One question I have for me and for all of us, and I will say, I'm excited where we're going as a state in our whole renewable portfolio. I'm all on board, but it has to be incremental. And I think what we did last year was a bit hastily done, and I think this is a good compromise. And one finer point on the funding. I mean, Governor Northam didn't put any money in. There was no money in his outgoing budget. There's no money on either side, in this. But I think that's telling, Mr. Chairman, and what this just slows the train down, and so that's
okay. I thank you, and I'll just. But before we take a vote, I'll just Chairman's prerogative. I've listened to Volkswagen, Michelle, and there's some excellent points. We just enacted this law, though. I think we got to give it a little time to breathe. And so I'm going to oppose your bill. Again, this is a good discussion. We may be having it again next year, in which case the dynamics could be different. But for right now, I'd like to let this law breathe a little bit. So I'm going to oppose the motion. Clerk, open the roll.
The motion was to.
Motion, it was a substitute motion to report.
Motion to report is no.
This is to report.
Where are we?
All right.
Money.
Ayes 7, noes 8.
Okay, 7, the bill does not report, and I'll take a motion to PBI in a second.
So moved.
Okay, clerk.
You
know what, that's fine. Why don't we'll carry it over for the year.
That would require that we take up the bill once more. It would
Yeah.
be a motion to reconsider.
A motion, no, it didn't report.
It's been considered that failed motion to report is an affirmative decision by the committee to not report the bill, so it'll come in as failed to report.
All right, why don't we do this? It really doesn't matter, okay?
Any way you
I'll write a letter to you. You can write a letter to me, okay? There you go.
Mr. Chairman, I trust your word.
You will.
Yes,
I'll
indeed.
see you. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members, for your time.
Good work, everybody. All right, I next have Delegate Davis. We're going to come back to you. Then I have Bloxham, Bell, Webert, Kilgore in that order. So, and can I get a cup of coffee? Just black. All right, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I can assure you this is a great bill because it was actually written by high school students. So a couple of high school students that collect food for those in need and homeless came to me regarding some concerns they had about the liability some donors felt when they were looking to give food. So what this bill does is it amends the liabilities to those that wish to donate prepared food, as well as restaurants, to food banks, et cetera, for the purposes of being able to garner more food for those in need facing food challenges. And that's essentially what this bill does, Mr. Chairman, and I know there's a couple people that would love to testify if you so would like.
Thank you, Delegate Davis. Do we have those who are here in support? Do we have the bill up on the number?
No, we do not.
Yeah.
It's House Bill 1249. That's right.
Okay. Thank you. Let us know your name and.
Hi, my name is Natalia de los Rios. It's an honor to speak before you today, esteemed senators. I am a junior in the International Baccalaureate program at Princess Anne High School and the Environmental Studies program in Virginia Beach. I'm also the site director of a nonprofit dedicated to helping farms, supermarkets, and other businesses manage their excess food by immediately transporting it to community agencies serving those in need. We have redistributed over 2 million pounds of excess food, but we are barely scratching the surface of the problem. I meet with business owners daily, and despite the Emerson Act, they still have reservations about donating because of the vague language regarding liability protections for donations past the best by date. Two of our major partners, Food Donation Connection, which manages donation programs for national chains like Whole Foods and Chick-fil-A, as well as the Norfolk-based Military Produce Group, which supplies all of the commissaries in Virginia, both strongly support our bill, as you can see in the statements before you. Please vote to pass this bill and make sure Virginia's wholesome food fills plates and not our landfills. Thank you.
Okay. Any others? Thank you very much. Any other speakers in support? Okay. Any speakers in opposition?
For those attendees in the Zoom room who would like to speak in opposition to the bill, please raise your hand electronically now. Mr. Chairman, there are no hands raised online.
All right. I've got a motion and a second to report the bill. Clerk, open the...
Mr. Chairman.
Hold on 1 second. Senator Morrissey.
With regard to the word "all parties" on line 32, I get it, the donators, the donees. What, are you talking about people that are purchasing it?
Yes, so the food donors and food organizations
I get that.
specifically.
I'm talking about the people that go to Habitat for Humanity. There's been people that have donated the food, they are receiving it. Does the all parties include those two groups, or does it extend to the people that are purchasing it?
Oh, no, just those two groups, yes, sir.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Okay. Senator Marson.
Thank you. Do we have, and maybe VDAX can answer the question, are there any laws around the distribution of food that has gone past its date? Is there anything there that...
Yes, sir. There's a 7-day window, which is what we address here.
Okay.
That you can only donate prepared food. So let's say a McDonald's, for example, or a grocery store that has prepared food. There's a 7-day window, and this mandates that it has to have the prepared on date, which will be day 1 of that 7 days, and it can be donated up until day 7.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, it's donated. All right. Yeah, I'm fine. Okay. Any other questions? And I will say you might want to keep an eye on Suravel on the floor because this is an immunity bill, but it is donated food. Okay. Do I have a motion on the bill? I think I had a motion to report in a second. Clerk, open the roll.
Ayes 15, no 0.
Getting soft. Okay, good work. All right, next we have Delegate Bloxham. Okay.
Thank you, Mr.
Yes,
Chairman.
sir, go ahead.
House Bill 847, I think there is a substitute for that.
Okay, can we distribute the substitute, please? Motion to adopt substitute, all in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, Lisa, if you could distribute that.
Mr. Chairman, all this does now is it turns it into a study to try to figure out if we need one. There was language proposed that would kind of presuppose that we would need one. I rejected that. I think that we need to study it to see if we actually need an authority. So that's what House Bill 847 does.
Okay, now, I know this has been on kind of a journey.
Yes, sir.
And Linwood, you're here. Can someone sort of, we started off with the flood prevention fund, then how was this different? Now, what do we, help me with the history here.
Mr. Chairman, the genesis of this bill was, in the original version of Delegate Bloxham's bill, was the creation of a regional authority.
To do what?
To manage the Community Flood Preparedness Fund, to manage resilience planning, and it set up, again, a regional authority with membership, and the thought of some of us was that perhaps we weren't quite ready for that.
And was this just the 757, or was it all at
This was statewide.
Made it statewide.
Statewide, okay.
Statewide, yes, sir. And the thinking of the administration was that we needed this to draw down federal money to be the matching entity to do that.
Okay.
There's a difference of opinion if we actually need that or not. But this is why this study, I think, probably needs to go forward to figure out if we actually need it or not. There was language, as I said, to presuppose that it was needed, and I rejected that.
Okay, Senator Stewart.
Delegate Bloxham, to that point, and I support this bill, I think this is a good way to go forward, but there was some thought that you did have to have that in order to draw down that money and some.
Yes, sir, Senator. There is some thought that you have to. I think we might have provisions that are already set up and either with their coastal, I think Senator Lewis could probably answer that better. There's a mechanism we think we can use. Not 100% sure, and that's why I think this probably needs to go forward.
But, Mr. Chairman, this will work. This will work for now, and this is what we need to do, as I understand it.
Right. And we still have the Community Flood Preparedness Fund as well, so.
Okay. All right, so I think everyone's in violent agreement up here. Do I have a motion on the bill?
Second.
Move to report and refer this substitute to Senate Finance. Clerk, open the roll. It's a green bill, open chain.
Ayes 15, no zero.
All right. Thank you, Delegate.
Mr. Chairman, the House Bill 1261 that I think was re-referred to you want to take that up or take it later?
Yes, let's 1261 was the boards and commissions bill. Do we have a substitute on that? Motion and a second to adopt substitute. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, if you could distribute, Lisa, please. And just for the folks watching or in the audience, this is the boards and commissions bill that came out of the House, and then we amended to only make it a membership. Who selected the membership on the air boards and the water boards? And we kicked that off the floor and sent it back to committee because I think there was a little bit of uneasiness about where we were going with all this.
Yes, sir. It's a little vague, so this gets us started.
Let's get started all over again. So, Delegate, why don't you present the bill kind of all over again as if you're here for the first time?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill just deals with the appointment to the boards, DEQ boards. We fixed the permitting authority with Senator Stewart's bill. This gets us starting on the path of how the members get appointed and timeline is what this does. There will still be plenty of discussion left on this as we move forward.
Okay, so let me just read this. So this will be on the Air Pollution Board, 3 by the governor, 2 by the Senate rules, and 2 by the Speaker of the House, each member for a term of 4 years. Waste Management Board, 3 by the governor, 2 by the Senate rules, 2 by the House, again 4 years. And then I assume the Water Board is the same. Yeah, Senator Stewart.
This bill does much, much more than that.
Okay.
Let me tell you what this bill does. The House has recognized that the Senate is an equal body, and we're each going to appoint two members. And I think that's a big step forward. I see Delegate Kilgore shaking his head in affirmation. He agrees.
Senator Stewart, I think Delegate Bloxham would tell you that's one of the reasons it's going to be in conference.
Okay, so basically this is a bill to select a membership, and does this also include the Water Board? I'm looking for it.
Supposed to.
Supposed to.
Lisa? I don't see it.
Yes, sir. I believe the water board, I believe, is the 62.1 section. If, for whatever reason, the title of that section doesn't refer to the water board.
Okay, all right, I'll trust you.
And again, Mr. Chairman, I just think it's important that we have a direct link to those boards because we do deal with all DEQ matters quite extensively.
Okay. All right, do we have anyone to speak? So this is a membership bill. Anyone to speak in support?
For those attendees in the Zoom room who would like to speak in support of the bill, please raise your hand electronically now.
Anyone
Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Stewart supports. Anyone in opposition?
For those attendees in the Zoom room who would like to speak in opposition to the bill, please raise your hand electronically now. Mr. Chairman, there are no hands raised.
Okay, all right. I got a motion report. Is there a second? Second. Okay, clerk, open the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yep.
Ayes 15, no zero.
Okay, 15-0. All righty, Delegate Bell. And after that, we got Wiebert, Kilgore, and Bullivan in that order.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, this is House Bill 1350. It's the analog, cognate, whatever you wish to call it, to Senator Stanley's bill. I understand he's had extensive conversations over the course of the day, and a compromise acceptable to everybody's been reached.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Marston.
Mr. Chairman, this constituted the third of the subcommittee bills for companion animals that
Okay.
we reviewed, and we conformed this bill to Senator Stanley's. But Senator Stanley has an amendment that I think is critical to the situation, so I would yield.
Why don't we take up Stanley's bill, Rob, and you just sort of sit tight, and then we'll
That's my
take up
plan.
yours. Bill, why don't you, what's your bill number?
Bill number was 87.
87. Okay, so do we have a substitute for 87 or an amendment, or what are we doing?
No, actually, we're just taking his bill and we're amending, I believe the subcommittee put what my bill had, which was a March 1st, 2023 effective date on 87. We have talked to the stakeholders. Everybody is now in agreement. Envigo itself has committed to working on, extensively working on and commitment to fixing these problems. And so what we're going to then do is to have the effective date of what would be Delegates 1350 into
Okay.
July 1st, 2023 as the effective start date of these rules and
All right,
regulations.
let's do this, because I don't want to assume everybody knows what we're talking about, because this is a subcommittee. Senator Marsden, can you give a little bit of context, and then let's launch into the amendment?
This prohibits a dealer or commercial dog breed or cat breeder, including an entity that breeds dogs or cats regulated under federal law as a research animal, from importing for sales, selling, or offering for sale a dog or cat bred by a person who has received certain citations pursuant to the Federal Animal Welfare Control Act. And what the enactment clause on the bill does is create a date where if they get a critical violation after March 1st of 2023, that's in the current bill, that they would be forbidden from that point on to operate, to be able to sell or receive these animals. And what Senator Stanley's amendment does is move that March 1st, 2023 date to July 1st, 2023. We have worked with all the stakeholders. We want to make sure that the facility has a time to upgrade an aging facility. We've had new ownership come in as of November of 2021. So it's new ownership with the company. It is a large firm that does research and medical research, and this dog facility will just be part of the operations that they have. But they have some work to do. They just received from an association of which they're a member, they received an outstanding review. They had not had outstanding reviews last year while this ownership transfer was taking place. There were failures in July and in October, and we're very, very concerned about the facility. This gives them an opportunity to get things straightened out there, but come July under this amendment, which I would move, that as of July 1, 2023, any critical violation at this facility will lead to their ability to sell or receive animals will come to a halt.
Okay, so will be effective July 1, 2023. Do we need to make that amendment? Or?
I move the amendment.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and amendment to make this effective July 1, make this bill effective July 1, 2023. And Delegate, you accept that amendment?
I do. Yes,
okay.
sir.
Mr. Chairman, I believe also Lisa has a very technical amendment.
Lisa, you also have a technical amendment.
Yes, sir. On an issue that only people like me and Delegate Bell probably would appreciate. Instead of referring to commercial dog or cat breeder, we need to refer to commercial dog breeder or cat breeder, because commercial dog breeder is a defined term of art. So it will not change the import or the impact, just.
I've got a motion and a second for that amendment. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. So we've got this bill right in the right place. Charlie, you good? Okay. A lot of work went into this, and I thank the subcommittee. And do I have a motion to report the bill as amended?
Does it need to go up? Does it need to go upstairs?
No, I don't think it needs to go to. Okay. Motion and a second to
Mr.
report.
Chairman,
the bill.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
before we do that,
Senator Stanley.
I'd gotten word that perhaps someone from Envigo wanted to make a statement. They may or may not be in
You
here. I
know
don't
what,
know if they have to.
let's not make statements.
That's a great idea, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, let's not make statements, okay. All right, clerk, open the roll, please.
Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Okay, good work, Ralph.
Ayes 15, no, 0.
Okay, we are now on.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I failed on a couple proxies. Having voted on the prevailing side by which we passed House Bill 1261, could I reconsider that vote, please?
Sure, which one was that?
That was Bloxham's that just left with the appointment.
Okay,
And
let's.
I just have a proxy.
We have a motion to, you can't do it just by, okay, we have a motion.
If it wouldn't change the outcome.
No.
No,
Okay, I'll do it.
just do it.
Okay, sorry about
It was a
that.
proxy issue.
Yes.
Absolutely. Let me get with you at the time.
Pardon me, Mr. Chairman, I apologize.
All right, knocking things all over. Okay, Delegate Weber.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I have two pieces of legislation. Which would
Okay.
you like to go
Why don't you
first?
start with simple and then go complicated?
Say that?
Simple.
Okay, we'll do simple. Simple will be hopefully 1297, but every time I say simple, sometimes it ends up not being simple.
Okay.
However, HB 1297 simply directs the Soil and Water Control Board to consider existing interjurisdictional arrangements. Basically, what the bill does is I've got a county that, in their regional water planning, they're with one area, but the county's actually split between two areas, and they'd like to be able to move to the second. And it basically allows the Water Control Board to adopt regulations to allow localities to be able to switch between the regions.
Okay. So this only applies, you said, the Water Control Board?
Yes, sir.
Okay, any questions for the delegate? Okay, anyone here to speak in support?
For those attendees in the Zoom room who would like to speak in support of the bill, please raise your hand electronically now.
Got
Mr.
some?
Chairman, there are no hands raised.
There we go, we got somebody. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Eldon James on behalf of Fauquier County, and we thank Delegate Weber for carrying this. The regulatory process that's going on right now based on HB 542 from 2020, calls for all water supply planning to become regional and for the Water Control Board to designate those regions. The draft process has done that, and the recommendation of the advisory panel was give localities the opportunity to request to move from one region to an adjoining if it makes environmental sense. The staff determined they don't have the authority under the code as written to do that.
Is anyone opposed to this?
No.
Okay, I think that's, we got a motion and a second to report the bill. Clerk, open the roll. Stanley.
Ayes 14, no, 0.
Ayes 14, no 0. Okay, all right, next bill, Delegate.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, next up is House Bill 206.
I know we got a
Which-
substitute on that one.
We do have a substitute, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to adopt the substitute. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, please distribute the substitute. And this is House Bill 206. This is small renewable energy project, small being a relative term, of course. But Delegate, why don't you just go ahead and give us the background on this bill, and then we can start talking about the merits of the substitute. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, basically, in regards to a small utility-scale solar facility, basically 100 kilowatts or less, they go through what's known as the PBR, which is essentially a checklist with DEQ. And
You said 100 kilowatts or 100 megawatts?
150.
150 megawatts.
When if you go all the way up to that size,
Right.
you're looking at 1,500 to 2,000 acres.
Okay, go ahead. Keep going. Yes, sir.
Or less. And basically, what we've done in the Commonwealth is they go through a checklist, which is the PBR, and that's administered by DEQ. What the bill seeks to do is it adds agricultural and forestry lands to the mitigation portion of this bill, because what we are finding, Mr. Chairman, is that quite a bit of natural resources are getting sacrificed in the extent of building solar, and we'd like the state to try and create a balance and look at this. And what the PBR does, basically, in regards to the same thing that we do with wildlife and historical areas, is try and mitigate or minimize those effects as much as possible. And what the bill does is it seeks to do that. In the bill, with the substitute that we've got, we also create an advisory work group as those regulations are being promulgated, and then we also have a grandfathering clause because we don't want to we want to make sure that current projects that are in the queue are going to continue forward with this under the current law. We don't want to change, we don't want to take the rug out from under them while we're here. Mr. Chairman, basically what we have seen across the Commonwealth, but particularly in my district, is some of our prime agricultural lands are being outbid, and we are losing ground to some of these solar farms. Not only that, Mr. Chairman, but we have lost numerous acres of trees, thousands of acres of trees, and some of the folks that will testify have those percentages much more down than I do. But in regards to cleaning the bay, and as somebody who has continuously fought for full BMP funding, dealt with this on a pretty regular basis since I've been in the General Assembly, we don't want to do anything to harm the bay, and we want to make sure that our natural resources are kept intact. And trees and agricultural land does a pretty good job of that, Mr. Chairman. And I believe we've had a work group. I will commend all the folks that have worked on this, because they have spent countless hours putting this together in the substitute that you see before you. But I believe that this substitute achieves a balance. Not everybody's totally happy, and not everybody's totally mad. So.
Okay, why don't let's take some questions from the panel. Senator Morrissey, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Delegate. Today's contiguous forest lands are tomorrow's prime agriculture soils. How did you arrive at a consensus of 50 acres of contiguous forest lands?
I would have to leave that to the
10,
experts on the
just like
50.
you have for the prime agricultural soil?
Well, some of the folks that, in regards to prime
feel free to
agriculture-
phone a friend.
Yeah, I will
not
phone a
everybody,
friend,
but-
Mr. Chairman.
Kyle, tell us where the 50 acres came from of forestry.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Kyle Shreve, Virginia Agribusiness Council. I'll direct your line on the substitute, and I apologize, I have a copy that was given, but I'm not sure if the line number is
48.
match up. But it's 48 is.
56.
This has been negotiated several times over, Mr. Chairman, and to answer Senator Morrissey's question, and 50 acres really was a negotiated number that came out. I will tell you that the average parcel of land in forest use here in the Commonwealth is privately owned land that's 27 acres. And so we didn't want to make too big of we didn't want to make it too hard on solar developers, but at the same time, we need to conserve those acres. And I would tell you that there's been a lot of consternation caused in the solar community, as I'm sure you will hear, over putting in acreage thresholds. However, as Delegate Webert said, the Chesapeake Bay model at the federal level deals in acreage, and they deal it at the county level. And we get credit for conserving certain and get certain reductions there. And as you disturb more and more land, solar panels are treated as impervious surface. I'm not saying that's right. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm saying that's the way it is. And so if we are going to continue to put solar panels on our Chesapeake Bay land, the localities are going to be responsible for those TMDLs later on. And we need to find a way to mitigate that or offset that any way we can.
Senator Morrissey.
So let me understand this correctly, Kyle. If you have the average lot, for lack of a more artful expression, is 26.7 acres of forestry, but the analysis only has to be done if it would disturb 50 acres of contiguous forest lands. Is that right?
Mr. Chairman, I'd answer Senator Morrissey. The analysis is supposed to happen where relevant, as it would in wildlife, and then if it disturbs that many acres, then the mitigation triggers would kick in. And so the analysis is not necessarily, the analysis we're hoping would happen anytime you think you're getting close to that, and DEQ would have to evaluate that, and then the recommendations would kick in on top of that for mitigation if you disturb 50 acres or more.
Okay, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Senator Morrissey, another one?
Yes. So you can disturb 49 acres or less and not have to provide an analysis. You only have to do it if you disturb 50 acres. Is that right? Or more?
Mr. Chairman, the mitigation measures, that's correct, would not kick in that amount of time. And like I said, Mr. Chairman, there are places in this where we would have liked to have seen those numbers lower, but
I would also say you'd have to get a special use permit and you'd have to go through local ordinance.
which you, Mr. Chairman, I would say you would have to do that first anyway, is to go through the siting agreement at the local level before you even get to the PBR checklist.
Okay, Senator Marson.
Thank you. Kyle, just a quick question. The prime agricultural land that's can be used for grazing, or non-prime agricultural land can be used for grazing, but any kind of grazing land is irrelevant to whether it's prime or not.
Mr. Chairman, this is a common misunderstanding, as we have had to do a lot of education as this bill goes. What we are trying to preserve is natural resources, and you will see that agricultural or farmland is not used in the bill. We try to preserve the soil. And so prime agricultural soils in the Code of Virginia is class 1, 2, 3, and 4. USDA actually has 8 different classifications. We use the USDA term in an effort to try to narrow that, in which the soils that we are trying to preserve, which farmers have marginal farmland, that's classes 3 through 8. It also is convenient because USDA maps its prime agricultural land class 1 and 2, and we're hoping to use that map to help the solar industry.
20% of land zoned agriculture, less than 20% is prime. I think it's 18%.
It's 18% is the area across the Piedmont, the Piedmont environment. It's probably much less than that in the entire Commonwealth.
Okay, so we're talking about a fraction of the land zoned agriculture.
Mr. Chairman, yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, any other questions from the panel? All right, I think the best way to do this is, what I'd like to do, Delegate, I'm gonna kind of leave it up to you. This is a balancing act, folks, because on the one hand, we have solar developers that are trying to hit targets that we've set in the Clean Economy Act, which is, and someone's gonna give me the figure, I think it's 16,000 megawatts of solar by some date certain. And on the other hand, you've got all of the requirements, Chesapeake Bay 2000, the watershed improvement plan, and basically they're almost like two freight trains kind of coming at each other, and that's the tension. So what I'd like to do, if it's all right, Delegate, I mean, if you have someone who would kind of come forward from maybe the solar development side and just speak for a moment or two. Chip?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to nominate you. Why don't you just kind of, and you don't have to say you're in love with this, I'm assuming you're agreed to it.
Mr. Chairman, and members of the committee, first of all, let me thank Delegate Weber for giving us the space to work it out.
Right. Who's your client, by the way?
Client is the entire solar industry, very different organizations.
Solar system, okay.
Solar system, right? I'm lit up, right?
All right, okay.
So, and other industry players that care a great deal about this bill, buyers of renewable energy who came to Virginia because we have a reliable stream of renewable energy, and will expand in Virginia because of that reliable stream of energy. So, and also like to thank our stakeholder partners who we spent, as Delegate Weber said, hours and hours with each other trying to come up with something that we could move forward with. Basically what this substitute does is create the grandfather clause so that there's a protection for the existing investments in Virginia, billions of dollars of capital investment in solar as a result of the Clean Economy Act, and they will be able to proceed with their projects with certain thresholds that are set out in the enactment clause. The second thing that this bill does is to deal with what happens next. And there's a study work group that will happen at DEQ, and there are a number of legislative intent type parameters considering what happens with local zoning, the siting agreements, those kinds of things. What do you look at to determine a significant impact on ag property or any other natural resource, forested property for that reason, for that matter? And then the next thing it does is to say, and once you have a significant adverse impact, then what type of factors do you look for mitigation? And one of the major concerns of the solar industry was that if avoidance equals mitigation, then it would basically stop in its tracks most major solar projects in Virginia, which are, again, 1,000 acres or larger. It's really up to 150 acres, and some projects are larger than that. But that's a ton of property that would have to be mitigated, particularly when some of the stakeholders are looking at a one-for-one replacement.
When you talk about mitigation, I mean, the easiest form of mitigation, it seems to me, is basically like a no net loss policy, where if you're going to develop 1,000 acres of prime farmland, you got to go find 1,000 acres of prime farmland and put a conservation easement over it or something like that. What other mitigation measures are there? I mean, what else are we talking about?
So, first of all, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I would say that that's probably the discussion that'll take place over the year with the stakeholders in DEQ. And then, bless you, and then there's an opportunity to come back because the regulations wouldn't be effective until July 1 of 2024 at the earliest. So as a result of which, there'll be an opportunity to continue this legislative discussion in the 2023 General Assembly based upon where the stakeholders go and what resolutions there are. If the various different stakeholders are not satisfied with the first analysis, is there a significant adverse impact? And then the second thing is, what are the mitigation factors? Mitigation factors could be like wetlands mitigation, for example, where you could create a bank, you could make financial contributions. I don't think that realistically on the prime ag soils, discussion's been one-for-one replacement, but there's a lot of times where there's fingers of prime ag soil, and then there's other soils outside of that don't qualify for prime ag soils. And the question would be, is there a de minimis amount? I mean, all these things are things we work out, in the regulatory process. And the last thing I would say to you, everybody's worked hard on this particular language. We've sort of all agreed that we would stick with this language. We'd go forward with the regulatory and study committee process, and then we'd come back in 2023 if there's a continued legislative dialogue that needs to occur. So that would be the request on behalf of the solar industry, that you support the bill as is.
That's fair, and I think we all understand this is a developing process. This is not, tablets coming down from Mount Sinai. But all right, why don't we do this? Mike Rollband, are you in the house? Can you come forward? The director of DEQ, Department of Environmental Quality. You're going to have to pull together this group.
Correct.
Which at least I almost ran out of figures trying to count everyone who's included in this. You going to be able to handle all this?
Yeah, we had this. Well, first of all, there's no position at this time from our administration.
Okay.
But we have had discussions with staff, and we have the resources to handle it.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for Mike, because he's going to be kind of quarterbacking this, to be blunt.
Thank you, Senator.
Okay. Basically, the DEQ is going to have to come up with the regulations that are going to balance the industry against the environmental versus the agricultural concerns. So it's kind of a three-legged stool.
Yeah, we have a head start because there already was a regulatory group working and was almost done with other regulations on solar. So our concept is to expand that group and continue it. So there's already a head start. A lot of people know about these issues. And these issues are they've been discussed a lot.
Do we have I assume other states have done this, right? Carolina, Maryland?
Not to the extent that we're going to, as far as I know.
Okay. All right. Senator Morrissey.
Mike, one of the things that was explained to me is that when we're preparing forestry land for, say, a solar project, you go and you take all the trees out, then you go in with your bulldozers and you scrape out off the topsoil, according to this, up to 49.9 acres of topsoil, and then you put in your solar panels. Is that correct?
If that's done, that's not a good idea.
No.
But
isn't that what is often done?
It's done, well, yeah, it's done sometimes. It's kind of an issue near and dear to me. I mean, I've dealt with solar on my own property, on my own farm, and my own office building, and I've been a little outspoken against some solar projects, and I've met with one of the solar companies doing one of these projects, and they're not doing that in that case. So you don't have to. So that would be one of the things that we discuss in terms of mitigation is actually normally under the Clean Water Act. I think we'll consider the same thing. Typically a three-step process of avoidance, minimization, and compensation. That's what mitigation is. So the first thing would be to avoid impacts to the soils like you're talking about, because except for the roads, you can leave the intact soil profile and just simply use either pile foundations or helical anchors or other type of posts that would support the solar systems without disturbing the soil profile in most areas.
Okay.
Do you agree, follow-up question?
Senator Morrissey.
Do you agree that a disturbance of only more than 50 acres of forestry land is deemed to be a significant adverse impact on natural resources? Or do you believe that disturbing less than 50 acres is a significant impact on our natural resources?
That's a valuation that's determined by our society. So we will follow the regulations and the law and the group that's formed to determine that. Again, with respect to like other resources, for example, wetlands, they were considered, you could destroy as many as you want in the 1800s. You got a free square mile if you did that from the federal government. Then in my career, we went from unlimited headwater wetlands to 10 acres to 1 acre to a half to a quarter to a third rather to a tenth. That's now de minimis. So it depends on our society. So right now you are making with this
Right.
with this bill a determination as what is our value.
Final question, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Morrissey.
The chairman asked a few moments ago about mitigation, and I listened carefully to the answers that were given, and it sounded like this: let's pass the law now, and we'll worry about mitigation next year. That's what it sounded like to me. Did I hear that correctly?
What I heard, hopefully it's correct, is that this committee or stakeholder group is going to develop what is appropriate mitigation for these types of impacts.
Later.
Well, during this regulatory process.
But rule today that you can disturb slightly less than 50 acres of forestry land, and it's not a significant impact, right?
Correct.
That's wonderful.
Okay, first of all, did everyone in the audience catch what mitigation is? Avoidance, minimization, compensation, okay? Avoidance, minimization, compensation. Thank you. There's going to be a quiz later, next year. All right, Kyle.
Mr. Chairman, Kyle Shreve, again with the Virginia Agribusiness Council, a couple things. Number one is that it's important to remember when it comes to adverse impact, the bill says that it is going to be assumed that it is an adverse impact. There may be a determination by the department that there is an adverse impact on projects lower if there's a severe water quality issue. I think that's important to note. And that can also be done in the regulation. Mitigation often comes up with regulation. We've talked about wetlands in the past. There have been numerous regulatory things, and we thought it was important to go through the full Administrative Process Act to make sure that everybody had a chance to weigh in on what those look like. The other thing I would mention is, as has been mentioned by the solar developers, and we agree, is that mitigation can happen on site. And so there are BMPs, just as there are BMPs on a lot of other things when it comes to buffers, other plants that can be put around the solar panel to hold water quality, as well as turf in between, so that it minimizes the impacts to water quality. And so we do expect those to be included as well if avoidance is not available. And so we expect all those to be included in a final reg. We just wanted to make sure we weren't skipping the regulatory process and speeding this along. It is a very important issue, we understand, with an awful lot of stakeholders that, as you can tell, are pretty interested in it. And so we wanted to make sure all those were taken into account. And that's why we needed you to authorize this as a way to start the clock on the regulatory advisory panel. They happen all the time. I served on 8 of them last year at DEQ. And so, it's something that we can certainly work through to make sure we get it. And we do join the coalition of those that worked, and we did all the way through, as Mr. Dix said, supporting the substitute with no amendments because of all the work that's been done going into it. And thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you very much. And just to sort of summarize, this bill has to do with a permit by rule for small solar projects. It doesn't preempt local authority for special use permits and all of that. And basically, it sets some markers down of 10 acres for prime agricultural soils or 50 acres of prime or forest land as those being threshold definitions for what will be a solar project that will require mitigation measures. Those mitigation measures we're not going to determine today. We're pulling together a stakeholder group that will be led by the director of DEQ that will either be coming back to us or establishing by rule through the APA what those mitigation measures will be. And everything before December 31, 2024 will be grandfathered. Okay, so those are the key points. All right, that's where we are. We did adopt the substitute. All right, I need a motion on the bill. I've got a motion and a second to report on the bill. Clerk, open the roll. Somebody abstain. There we go.
Ayes 13, noes 0, 2 abstentions.
Good.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Good work. Good
Appreciate
work,
it.
Mike. Good
Thank you,
work.
sir.
Thank you. Okay. Kilgore, I know I've got you.
Yeah, right.
Um,
I've sat here so long, I think I'm a member of the committee.
Yeah, you might as well just.
It's been great listening to all this.
Sat
stuff.
up here on the dais with us.
Yeah. I think I've got an amendment in the nature of a substitute. that
Okay, why don't we,
Senator Morrissey has.
so I have a motion to adopt this, okay. A motion and a second to adopt the substitute. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, let's get that distributed.
And I think what this bill does, it only applies, the bill only applies now to commercial or industrial customers instead of at the and what passed the House was it also applied to residential customers. And it basically leaves the last part of the bill in about to discontinue natural gas utility services to commercial or industrial customers. And it basically sets up, you give 3 years notice, et cetera, that was included in the bill.
Okay, just give us a chance to read this, because this is different.
Well, it's, if you look, Mr. Chairman, at the bill I had, this is just the last section of that bill. The first sections of the bill apply to residential, and this section applies to commercial or industrial. I had to read it a couple times myself to make sure that was correct.
Okay, so basically this has to do with discontinuing service.
Right.
And what you have to do, what notice you have to give prior to discontinuing service.
Yes, sir.
And then a public entity seeking to discontinue shall advise customers. Okay, nothing shall be construed to limit the rights of a public.
Right.
Okay. All right. Well, this is a little bit different bill than what we had. Okay.
A lot different.
A lot different. Okay,
Yeah.
this bill's a lot different. It went, now it's a pro-consumer bill. It's, okay. Where's Property Law Center? Come on in here. Okay. All right, so this has to do with notice of discontinuance of gas service. All right, why don't you go ahead and speak whoever's in favor? Yes, sir. Okay.
Not in favor of the substitute.
Not in favor. All right, Brett, why don't you come forward and speak in favor?
Mr. Chairman, Brett Bassey, President and CEO of the Virginia Manufacturers Association. We appreciate working with Patron on the bill. For us, and you all have heard me talk about this already, but the bottom line is industrials have to have access to natural gas. Our commercial suppliers have to have access to natural gas. We use it as a feedstock to actually make things like ammonia. Ammonia is a derivative that makes everything from your car to your batteries to your electronics. So this is sending a signal that we are going to have a process whereby if someone is going to take away natural gas, there is at least a public notice. We have 6,750 factories in Virginia, so this is a pro-consumer, and it is very different than the introduced bill.
Yeah, very different.
And Senator Morrissey introduced that. I think there may, Mr. Chairman, and for the patron, we're still looking at some of this. I think maybe the word propane was missed.
Okay, well, one thing, just for the record, on mine, line 11, it says, no public entity is defined in 56-265.4:7. That part is struck out. Is that correct?
That's struck out.
Okay,
yes,
Lisa,
yes.
you got that?
I struck it.
You struck it, okay, then you did definitely got it. That's how we got the best staff in town, okay.
It should have propane, but I don't know where that goes, Lisa. I don't know.
Oh, okay, so why don't we, we've got a bill that's substantially different than what you were probably looking at an hour ago. And I'm going to speak to that and what that means. But how about folks that are in support come forward, please? Senator Morrissey.
I know I came in late. I was presenting another bill. Can you tell me where we are as far
We just
as?
adopted this substitute, 1257.
All right.
Mr.
Yes.
Chairman, members of the committee, Eric Risen with the Virginia Chamber of Commerce. On behalf of our 28,000 members, we rely on reliable energy sources, support this moving forward, and still observing some parts of the substitute, but believe we can probably move forward with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Robert Melvin with the Virginia Restaurant Lodging and Travel Association. Natural gas is very critical for cooking in many restaurants. There are a lot of things you can't do with induction cooking and other forms of cooking that you can only do with natural gas, for example, walking rice and noodles, charring vegetables, things like that. So we encourage you to support the bill.
Okay, thank you, Robert. Hobie?
Hello, Hobie Bowen, Virginia Poultry Federation. For similar reasons, we're supportive as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
David Hudgens with the Virginia Energy Consumer Trust. One of the things that I hope the panel looks at the end of the day, gas is critical to our economy. It's critical to consumers. It's critical to, think about your generators. Think about your boats that people have, and how, in essence, if we go with batteries, et cetera, all your boats on the Chesapeake, in essence, are worthless. So this whole thing about doing away with gas and being on a single source of failure, especially with Ukraine and the Chinese and the grid, is very vulnerable to being on a single fuel source. Thank you for consideration.
Okay, good. We got a Ukraine reference. Good.
There we go.
Okay. 4:26 p.m. I was waiting for that. Okay, Stan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Stan Tretiak, representing Advancix. Advancix is a chemical company located in Hopewell. They have two plants, Hopewell and Chesterfield. And we have a little bit different slant in the fact that we use natural gas as a feedstock, not just an energy source. We're actually, if not the largest, one of the largest natural gas consumers, non-utility consumers east of the Mississippi. Use about 1 billion standard cubic feet a month, about 80,000 households. So it's without the product, without the natural gas, we can't make the product. And so we appreciate Senator Marcy and his efforts to do this. And
Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Senator
I
Morrissey.
knew I didn't want to, he has some statistics, and I didn't want to
No,
steal his
no
thunder.
statistics, but I guess it is. How many employees does Advancix have in Hopewell?
In Hopewell and Chesterfield, we have around 1,100.
Right, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else for, okay, how about against? For or against?
This isn't really against, but
Yeah, sure.
it's kind of make it up as we go along, if you
Yeah.
don't mind. Mike O'Connor, representing the Propane Marketers Association. And I go back to the original bill that we had today,
Right.
the delegates' bill. And there are a number of people in the back of the room that want to take out propane, that want to take out fuel oil and electrify everything in Virginia. They're
Right.
here, they want to do that. We're talking about, things like patio heaters, we're talking about gas logs. They want all that gone.
Right.
We're trying to protect that. We thought that the bill that included residential, before it was amended to just become industrial, did that. My understanding is that in the posture that we're in right now, that residential, the gas logs, the patio heaters, the pool heaters are gone.
That's all out.
Yeah, that's all out. And that's our concern, Senator.
Okay, so just for the audience, this was a much broader bill when it came out of the House, including basically all natural gas service, and we've stripped out residential and basically made it a notice of bill for commercial and industrial. And it seems like, looks like we've left in the local autonomy piece, as best I could tell. All right, people that are opposed, come forward. And by the way, if you want to speak to the opposition as it came out of the House, sure, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Peter Anderson with Appalachian Voices. I really just have a question about the definition of public entity. I understand why that my copy I got also has a pen strike through it.
Right. Talk to Lisa.
So I guess to the extent that public entity is generally understood to be, local governments, then I think I understand what we mean here by the bill. Seeing
the massive change to this bill. A lot of my concerns are resolved, and so I appreciate the patrons' willingness to do that. And
Okay.
I'm just going to step aside.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Tom Dick with the Municipal Electric Power Association of Virginia. MEPAV doesn't have a position on this bill, but the city of Danville has their electric utility and they have a natural gas utility, and their concern, and I haven't had a chance to review this, but their concern was on a notice. They're going to going through or will be doing a rate restructuring, and they might discontinue a particular customer class, and their concern was they'd have to have a 3-year notice if they were doing that. And it may be just a misinterpretation of that. We'll look at the substitute and try to get it figured out.
Well, I guess it defines on whether city of Danville is defined in 56, well, I don't know.
Do it quick. Well,
Yeah. All right.
We'll look at it. All right. Thank you.
All right.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Senator Mason.
It seems like Mr. Anderson asked the key question here. Can you just tell us what the public entities that we're covering under this bill would be?
I think it's all of them. All of them.
So
I think we stripped out the as defined. Is public entity a defined term, Lisa?
Mr. Chairman, that's actually why this was stricken. In the original bill that came from the House, public entity was a defined term in 56-265.4:7, but we struck that section from the bill, which is why we had to strike that reference. So we could redefine it. You could.
All right.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Senator Mason, Senator Mason.
So, stupid question, not public entity, but a public entity with a natural gas utility service. So who would that be? Mr. Chairman, if
Go
I
ahead.
could,
Yes,
I
sir.
could respond to that. In Virginia, there are only 3 cities that operate their own natural gas utility.
One's
City of
Danville.
Charlottesville, City of Richmond, and City of Danville.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, Bob Shippey with Sierra Club. This is a much improved version of the bill, and I appreciate the work on that. I still think it's a solution seeking a problem that doesn't actually exist. So I think in that regard, it's a needless infringement on those localities' authority.
All right, thank you, Bob. Chris.
Senator Peterson, members of the committee, we too want to thank the patron for this change. It alleviates the vast majority of our concerns. I would ask, as you're looking forward, that the potential impacts, if any, to local government be considered, as well as the impact of the timing of the notice and the 3-year off-ramp to determine is that number sufficient? Does that get at the issues that are addressed? Or with this being the intent and with this alleviating a lot of the concerns of the environmental community,
Right.
are there ways to sort of, before this comes before the floor, determine whether there's anything that needs to be changed? At this
Okay.
time, this has addressed the vast majority of our concerns, however.
Okay, all right, here's kind of where I am on this. Believe it or not, I didn't come into town on the turnip truck last night, and so I'm not oblivious to the fact this is going to end up in conference.
I don't know. I mean,
Well-
I like it pretty good
Oh,
right
I'm
now.
sure,
so-
I'm sure, I'm sure.
I don't like conferences.
Well, listen, the conference, a lot of good legislation gets written in conference, because it seems to me there's a couple laps that need to go around the track before this is ready for prime time.
I can put it in conference.
But yeah, I think we need to put this in conference.
Okay,
And,
I'll do
and
that.
we can control that delegate, and I trust I trust you, hopefully you trust me, and we'll figure this out. I do agree the municipality issue is an issue. This is a much more palatable bill for the environmental community than what we saw, a day ago. But I think the municipality issue, we're gonna have to figure out. And, for the natural gas, community, you're right. I mean, natural gas has become a much more vital resource just in the last 7 days. So that's just something we gotta be cognizant of. So I think we ought to report this and get it into conference.
Okay.
All right, we have a motion and a second to report. Clerk, open the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yep, good work.
Nice sitting with you all afternoon.
There we go. Okay, is Delegate Bulova here?
We told him to go away.
Oh, we did? His is identical? Okay, let's report that out then.
Move the report.
Which bill is it?
Mr. Chairman, Delegate Boliva's House Bill 1309 is identical to Senator Lewis's SB 756, establishing the Virginia Revolving Loan Fund.
Mr. Chair, Senate Finance has asked for this bill.
Okay, so we've got House Bill 1309, is identical to Lewis's bill. I have a motion and a second to report and refer to Finance. Clerk, open the roll. Okay.
Ayes 15, no 0.
Okay, ayes 15, no 0. All right, everybody, look, it's been real, and thanks. We've had a great session, and hopefully y'all enjoyed it as much as I did. Peace.
Mr. Chair, we
What?
still have 2 bills.
What?
HB 49, Delegate Ferris, and HB 314, Delegate Kreisek.
Ferris? Are they identical?
Oh, pardon me. Oh, no.
Ferris had the one I wanted to talk about. Yeah, it had some weird language. All right, what's the other one? Kreisek?
That's HB 314, Senator Kreisek's bill on noxious weeds and invasive plants.
Okay, is there any opposition to that bill? I don't think so. It came out 100-0. Martha, you're okay? Okay, we've got a motion and a second to report HB 1309. No, not HB 314. Clerk, open the roll. Okay, so that's Kreisek. Okay.
Ayes 14, no 0.
Okay. Here's what I'm going to do on. I know, but there was some language to it. I need to get an answer from him. All right, here's what we'll do on Ferris. If I could get, right. Yeah, but I mean, Clerk, is there a way we could take the Ferris bill? I could just meet with the delegate and then have a meeting at my desk?
It is
I don't-
possible to have a brief meeting for the court, yes, Mr. Chair.
All right, why don't we do this? Let's report out the Ferris bill. I'm going to put an abstain on it because I need to get a couple questions answered before we take it to the final lap. All right. All right. House Bill 49, I've got a motion and a second to report that. Clerk, open the roll. Okay.
Ayes 11, noes 2, abstentions 1.
Who is? All right. Ayes 11, noes 2, abstention 1. All right. Great. All right, guys. Everybody, a lot of fun. Thank you.
Good job.
Sure.
Except when you're inundated with dogs.
Yes.